Welcome back. As promised, this is the revised 1967 Topps complete set presentation. 2 months ago, I did a 1967 Topps presentation on what I had up to that point. Like at that time, I was still missing about 10 to 11 cards. Since that time, I have been able to acquire all of the remaining cards, so this will be an actual complete set presentation of the 1967 Topps set. By far the most difficult set I've ever completed. 4 years ago, I believe I think it was the spring of 2018, I had finished the 1968 Topps set by picking up the Nolan Ryan rookie and also the Mickey Mantle card. And I was debating whether or not to start the 1957 Topps set, which I had probably about half the set at that point, or keep going back sequentially and doing 67. So I actually tortured myself and did both. They're actually in the same binder right now. At some point I need to be able to separate them so you can see the end of the 1957 Topps set right here in the corner. It's probably one of the most expensive items that's in the home at the moment, so I probably need to actually separate it for a couple different reasons because it's got both sets in it. So the 1967 Topps set, I started both at the same time. I finished the 57 set within about a year and a half. The 67 Topps set, I was maybe a little underestimating just how difficult it would be to be able to get the 1967 Topps High Series cards in the price and condition that I was comfortable with. Now, granted, I have a low to mid-grade set with some cards that are a little bit better in it, but I wasn't looking for like perfect cards either. But still, those things were costing quite a bit, and we'll talk a little bit about the challenges of getting the High Series cards as we near it. So, without further ado, this is all of the cards in the set, which is pretty exciting for me to be able to share that with you now. So we're going to go through it. It's all 600 plus of them, and I'm really excited to be able to kind of put out the revised video. All right, so the 1967 Topps set, in my mind's got probably one of the best four designs of the 1960s. The other ones I would really like to, at some point, complete would be 1960, 63, and 65. Then I think 67 is the next big one for me. They're in no particular order, but I really enjoy the full color photos in here, which I think makes it really stand out, and the white borders that kind of really matte the pictures really well, and then the colors for each individual team vary for the team lettering. It's a really simple design. I think for those of you who are maybe like me, who love the simple designs, I love heritage. I love, for example, the 1953 Bowman color, just because it's simple and you have these great close-up photos of these players in their primes or when they're just beginning their careers. I just love looking back on these pictures and seeing these guys when they were in the prime of their lives or just emerging into the prime of their lives. And what better way to be able to do this with a really close-up photo or like a stylized photo like you see for Whitey Ford. The backs have a sort of an avocado green finish, what not all the collectors like. I kind of like the light green finish on it. It's very different from any of the card stocks they used up to that point, and really ever since, until they did Heritage again. They do have some green card stocks in the 70s, but they're much darker. They're more like evergreen. So please take a moment and enjoy. So starting out, I'll point out some of the stars and the Hall of Famers. As you can see, the champions from 1966 were the Baltimore Orioles, and you have both the Robinson boys up here with their manager Hank Bauer right in the middle. Other Hall of Famer on the team would be Luis Aparicio, is the first name that kind of popped in my mind, but also Jim Palmer. And you'll see those cards as we go through the set. This was the last appearance of Whitey Ford in a top set, so this is also kind of a cool reason to kind of complete sets as you get like the first and last appearance of some Hall of Famers, and there's some pretty big first appearances of Hall of Famers as we get towards the end. All right, so let's get started as we start looking through here. So the dual rookie cards were not uncommon during the 1960s, but definitely 67 featured quite a few of them in there, including probably the two most expensive cards that are in the set. 1967 is known for the World Series between the Boston Red Sox and the St. Louis Cardinals. It was the first appearance of the Boston Red Sox in the World Series since the 1940s, so it was a really big deal for them to be able to make it. And like the mini sets of the 1950s and the 1960s, collectors love to be able to collect the teams that were in the World Series and the teams that won the World Series. So both the Cardinals and also the Red Sox cards kind of come as a premium. So if you're completing the 1967 set, be prepared for that. Orlando Cepeda up here at the top. Elston Howard's not a Hall of Famer, but a pretty famous Yankee. Is down here at the bottom. Al Kaline. It's kind of funny, I can remember the stories of where I picked up some of these star players from time to time. Many of them I bought offline and in lots, but not all of them. I picked up a bunch of the 2019 National. I just went through boxes and started picking up some of the star cards I needed. I think I picked up over 100 cards that day, and many of them were Hall of Famers. Rick Weiss, who was later traded for Steve Carlton for the Phillies. There he is, still with the Philadelphia Phillies at this point. Roger Maris down in the corner, the first appearance as a St. Louis Cardinal. Tony Oliva, someone who's going to officially be put into the Hall of Fame this weekend. As you see, these avocado green backs to these cards. They do fade a little over time, so they kind of lose a little bit of the color. Sometimes they'll get a little darker, sometimes they'll get a little lighter. So it's really, don't get too thrown off when you're buying vintage cards if the backs aren't really like bright, fresh out of the pack, because that's not too common. They do take a little of that into account when they grade them, but it's not something that's going to be a major knockoff on the card overall. But if you're looking for a super high grade of the card, like 9s and 10s, usually they're taking those things into account. They don't usually look at aging in that way. It's more wear is what they're kind of looking for. As I mentioned before, Luis Aparicio over here in the corner. And then we have Lou Brock with Curt Flood. The checklist all had a picture of a Hall of Famer highlighted at the top. And here we have Frank Robinson, a Triple Crown winner. And I don't want to miss out on Don Drysdale here at the top. This was the first set where actually Sandy Koufax did not have a card, even though he's on some league leaders that we'll see coming up. Ron Santo down here in the corner. For all you Cub fans out there, it's actually going to be 4 Cub Hall of Famers in this set. One of the great baseball names, Eddie Stanky in my mind. Rusty Staub up here in the corner, not a Hall of Famer, but a very great player in his own right. Vicky Lowlich, I think someone who should be reconsidered for the Hall of Fame at some point. One of the best left-handers of his era. And just look at the colors on these cards. You can really enjoy these uniforms. It's right before they started changing in the late 60s and early 70s. So you get a lot of that 1950s and 60s feel in their uniforms. Frank Robinson up here in the corner. And we got an appearance of Mickey Mantle on a checklist. That's a cheap way to pick up vintage Mantles, by the way. Look for him on checklist. I think he appears on the 69 checklist as well. They had rookie cup cards in 1967 as well. Team cards are pretty basic. They're all going to have a color matting in the back with a cutout of the actual team photo. So you're not going to see the background of where that was taken, which was usually in spring training or stadiums. You have a lot of these dual cards, as we saw earlier, where you have a couple players on the same card. There's a few where you're going to see multiple Hall of Famers on the same card, but it's maybe not as frequent as you saw earlier on in the 1960s. So the low series for this set is considered 1 through 533. Everything above that, all the way up to 609, is considered to be the high series. The low series weren't too hard to pick up for the most part. The last series right before the high series is maybe a little bit more expensive, but in general, the commons are going to be very affordable. So a lot of people consider this set kind of complete for themselves if they just get through 533. Kind of similar to the 1952 top set if you skip the last series, which is so super expensive and super rare that some people just want to collect up to that point. Pop Stargell, before he had his mustache. Steve Carlton, who I mentioned earlier, who just happens to be on the same page as Mickey Mantle. I'll tell you what, when I picked up this card, I was so excited when I got it because I got it at a good price, but when it came that day, I was just blown away by its condition. Really, the only thing that kind of takes away from it is there's a hairline crease on the edge here, which would knock down several grades. But the centering's not too bad. The color's great. The edges are almost perfect on this card. So it's still probably one maybe at some point worth kind of submitting in for grading. The World Series cards look like television sets, which is obviously many ways that people watch the World Series at that point. You know, it's transitioning at that point well into the 60s into a television event versus just a radio event. Yeah, just a great looking Mantle all around. I couldn't even tell you what it'd grade out as because I know the crease does take away from the card. But it's just really impressive looking item. My most enjoyable Mickey Mantle card to date. Hall of Famer manager Dick Williams down here at the bottom. Eddie Matthews, who's not in a familiar, well, he's in a familiar uniform, just it says the wrong team beneath it. This is his first appearance as an Astro. He actually played for the Tigers the following year as a part of their World Series team. The World Champion Cardinals card. A Hall of Fame broadcaster here for the White Sox, Ken the Hawk Harrelson. Retired a few years ago. We got an appearance of Willie Mays right here at the top on the checklist. So you know he's coming up. He's in the series. I think Hank Aaron might be in this series too as we get to him. Here he is, right there. Willie Mays right at the top. Might not in the best condition, but it's just a great picture of Willie. Like, I love these close-up photos because you really can get a feel for what they look like as a person, their smile. You don't get maybe a good feeling of how big of a people these are because they're not taken from a perspective in many ways, but just love the smile on the kid there. Again, one of my favorite pictures in the set. Bob Gibson, here at the top. Down here we have Ernie Banks, and then we have an appearance of Al Kaline on a dual card with Norm Cash. Cash would have been a nice one for the White Sox to have kept. Mel Stallmeyer, probably many of you remember seeing him in the dugout for the World Series teams, the Yankees in the 1990s. He was the pitching coach. Longtime Yankee pitcher before that. There we go. Gil Hodges going to be going in the Hall of Fame this coming weekend. And Hall of Fame player. Here he is pictured as a manager before he went over to the New York Mets as a manager. I think was the following year. As you can see, the league leader cards look very similar to 66. So you can get them kind of confused. You have to look at the top to make sure it's not the 65 season or versus the 66 season. And then obviously the backs would be a dead giveaway to give you an idea of what it is. This is the only appearance you'll see of Sandy Koufax in here is on the league leader cards. As many people know, he obviously had a wonderful season right before he retired. So he's going to be leading the league in a lot of the cards that you kind of see here. He's going to appear on many of them. I like these because these are also cheap ways to be able to pick up Hall of Famers too. If you're a Hall of Fame collector, won't break the bank to be able to get, okay, I want a Sandy Koufax card. Well, heck, get this one. You got Juan Marichal, Bob Gibson, and Gaylord Perry on the same card. That is pretty cool. And many of them are like that from this era. So you have Frank Robinson, Tony Leave, and Al Kaline. Again, 3 Hall of Famers listed on there. This one's a pretty cool one, I think. Dick Allen, who probably should be reconsidered. It's got Clemente and also Hank Aaron on the same card. That is just really cool. And here you have Aaron and Willie Mays with Dick Allen on the same card. Just really cool stuff. Here we have Hank Aaron down here in the corner. Similar to my Mantle card, there's also some creasing here. It's not as sharp as the other one overall, though, because the corners are still great, but the edges get a little bit of a nick on there. Probably still something that probably would grade out pretty well, though, at some point if I wanted to send it in. So that's Hank Aaron. Pop Stargell appears again. The fellow Pittsburgh Slugger. Now another Hall of Famer here, Jim Cott. So we know Jim Cott's card is going to be in this next series. He is also going in this coming weekend. Lou Brock. John Blue Moon Odom before he picked up his nickname. Alston, Hall of Fame manager for the Dodgers. That's crazy they went from Alston to Tommy Lasorda as their managers. That's just amazing. Jim Cott up here in the corner. I just pointed out this last time too. Somehow I got 2 Bud Harrelsons and I somehow screwed up the sequential numbering on here. I did double check to make sure I had all the cards, so it does follow suit thereafter. I wasn't sure if I was missing maybe 1 card or somewhere because I got thrown off, but nope, it was just a mistake. So I got 2 Bud Harrelsons in there. Too bad it wasn't 2 Mickey Mantles, right? Billy Williams up here in the corner. Gaylord Perry. 2 guys who are still with us to this day. Bob Uecker, Hall of Fame broadcaster. Ferguson Jenkins, his first Cubs card, because his 1966 rookie is with the Philadelphia Phillies. Harmon Killebrew. Joe Morgan. Joe Torre, Hall of Fame manager. Tug McGraw, father of country music star Tim. Carl Yastrzemski. Now mine's off center, but it's still a nice example of his card. That one is actually going to cost you a little bit of premium because it's going to be from his 1967 season when he actually led the team to the World Series. So keep in mind, if you wanted to pick up that Yastrzemski, you might be paying a little bit more for that copy than you would, for example, maybe his 1966 card, for that exact reason. People like to buy sometimes the Hall of Fame card with the season that they're kind of known for, if they're not able to afford their rookies, for sure. All right, so we got Clemente coming up here. He's on the top of the checklist. And what a great set, right? You have all these great names from the 60s. A few left over from the 50s. Guys who went on to later star in the 70s. Also start beginning to appear in these sets. Jim Hunter, right up here before he got his nickname Catfish. There he is, Bob Clemente, right there in the middle. Mine's a little off center, but otherwise it's a pretty good condition card of this Hall of Famer. White Wilhelm. All right, so this is where I start able to show some of the graded cards I've been able to pick up. This one was a gift, so I have it in a PSA 7. Much better condition than the one that's in my binder. So I do have that as part of sort of my Hall of Fame White Sox collection. So I was able to pick up that card because it was given to me as a gift by my buddy Robbie. Really love that card. Willie Mays and Willie McCovey. I think that might be the only one you have 2 Hall of Famers on that's featured like this. I mean, that's a cool card. Look how much bigger Stretch was than Willie Mays. That's amazing. Pete Rose, down here at the bottom, someone I think personally should be granted access to the Hall of Fame at some point. Feel free to debate in the comments. I'm pretty set on that opinion. Don Sutton, right here in the middle. His first, not his first appearance as a Dodger, because he did have a rookie card, but the first card where he's pictured by himself. Dick Allen, not Hall of Famer yet, but hopefully soon. Phil Niekro down here at the bottom. See, Juan Marichal's coming up in the 6th series, which is the last series before the high series. We got Harmon Killebrew. Mine is just all kinds of off-center here because of the way that the cardstock was cut. But a great image of Killebrew. One of the more affordable Hall of Fame 500 home run club members from the 1950s and 60s. Jim Palmer, his 2nd-year card, and Tony Perez, which I think is his 3rd-year card, if I'm not mistaken. I believe his rookie's in 65. Hall of Fame manager Leo DeRocher right next to Stretch, Willie McCovey. This is one I would like to upgrade because there's a crease in here that I couldn't see when I purchased it online. It wasn't very disclosed very well that it was in there. It was cheap, so it wasn't something I was really going to be debating on, but I do want to upgrade that one at one point. It's the one Hall of Famer in here that's in really, really bad shape. Juan Marichal. Bill Mazeroski, probably also one up for upgrade too, which wouldn't be too expensive to be able to upgrade that one. Hall of Fame manager Red Shandies. We are nearing the end of the 6th series. All right, so the 7th series. This Brooks Robinson card actually appears in the 6th series, so it's not part of the 7th series, but it lists every card that's in the 7th series, in case you're wondering in there. You can also find Cardboard Connection, gives you a whole checklist of all the cards that are listed in that series. But the first card in the 7th and final series is going to be Hank Bauer. Many of these cards are going to be short printed, whereas others there's going to be like double prints. It had everything to do with the layout on the cardstock before it was sent to the printer, because it didn't fit like the normal amount, so they had to print some cards a couple more times to fit out the sheet. So inadvertently, that created more of some cards versus others. And furthermore, these cards were not in demand by the time that they were available for purchase for retailers. They just didn't have a need for them. People weren't buying them at that point because it was football season. There is a story that these cards never made it west of the Mississippi, which also is another reason why these cards are actually really short printed. And probably the most short printed cards in the 1960s by far, although some people may debate 66. Although when I looked up the differences in the prices of sets at this point between 66 and 67, there's a noticeable difference in the cost of 67, and I think it has everything to do with the high numbers. All right, so let's dive into it. We actually have 4 Hall of Famers that are going to be featured in here, and I'll point them out as we get into them. Joe Niekro's rookie card here, Phil Niekro's brother. Not a Hall of Famer, but I just wanted to point him out. Norm Cash up in the corner, that's going to be one. It's going to cost you a little bit more because he is a star of that era. I have a lot of graded cards to fill in some of there will be blank spots in here, so I'll start showing you those as we get through them. So it's like, this one is double printed, so this Doug Camille is not going to cost you a lot, Camille. Whereas I think this Al Weiss was, I think, 4 times the price at least of this one. It may have been more than when I purchased it, and it may be more now. So that kind of gives you an example of like the differences you might see. It might be 4 to 5x on some cards, and some cards it's even higher than that, than some of the double printed ones you can easily get for the high series. And that was what I found kind of misleading, is when I started getting some of the high series, I'm like, oh, this isn't too bad. Then I quickly got all the ones that were double printed, and I was like, oh, now I know what people are talking about, because the prices were so much more expensive at that point for the remaining cards. So then I understood. All right, so the first gap I have in here is a Ted Savage. I picked this one up because it was the same price as an ungraded copy that I was looking at. So I was like, why not get a graded copy? And it's a PSA 9, although it's got a qualifier for off-center, which is fine, but the PSA 9 is just beautiful. So I could really use that as a comparison to kind of get an idea of like the condition of cards and whether or not I should send some in for grading or not in the 1967 top set. This is about as sharp as it's going to get. The only imperfection is that it's off-center. So we got Ted Savage there. You see the green back as well. All right, moving on. This Mark Belanger, man, that was an expensive card. Again, people wanted to pick up the team that was in the World Series, right? And he was actually part of, I think he might have been on the bench with that time. He was kind of the heir apparent to Luis Aparicio, even though I think Aparicio may have played one more season with them before the shortstop position went to Mark. But that card is expensive because it was part of the team that won the World Series the previous year. So again, people love to be able to pick up the guys that play for that team, and that was the first one available that you could pick up. Jim Bunning up here in the corner is the first Hall of Fame appearance that we have in the high series. This is one I'd like to upgrade at some point because there is ink that actually leaked onto the card, which kind of really brings it down a bit, and there's a little bit of a creasing that happens in the middle of the card. So it's kind of on my list in the future to maybe upgrade that card and probably get it into a graded holder because I have all the Hall of Famers for the high series in graded card holders, so I think I kind of want to keep that theme going. First appearance of Maury Wills as on a Topps card. I mean, he just wasn't on cards before then because he didn't have a contract with Topps. I think he might be in the 63 Fleer, and that's it. You don't see him again until 1967 Topps. So this one's going to cost you a little bit more because people like to be able to pick up a Maury Wills card, who was a MVP and a pretty key player on some of the Dodgers teams that won World Series in the 1960s. All right, so we have one that's missing here, which is card, I think, 569, which is actually going to be a Hall of Fame rookie, Rod Carew. And I have this in a PSA 4. I believe this actually is double printed, but because it's Rod Carew and a Hall of Famer, I mean, they still are not as common as the cards in the lower series, so it's still going to come in a little bit more as a premium. So that is why the Rod Carew card, if you start looking it up and want to purchase it, it's going to cost you a little bit more. Solid PSA 4, the centering's really good, the edges kind of show why it's a 4, and that's perfectly fine. It was in the price range that I was hoping for the set, and I think it is the second most valuable card I own. The first most valuable one is going to show up in this set too. All right, so now we're up to the next graded card would be 576. This one just came in. If you saw my video recently from yesterday, this is the last card I needed, and I got it in a SGC 5. Talked a little bit about that card yesterday. Then we have two back-to-back in a row here. It's going to be these items and this item right here, these missing spots next to Bill Henry and between Jim Owens. Rocky Colavito, not a Hall of Famer. Probably won't get consideration for it, but he definitely is a guy that's beloved in Cleveland and also in Detroit during this time period because he was quite the slugger for those two teams. Two teams that really didn't have a lot to cheer for during that time period in the early 60s. He was one of the stars. So this is one of the ones I picked up in the last month. You've seen it probably featured on the channel. And following that is Tom Seaver's rookie card, and this is by far the most expensive card in the set. They are available out there. People put these out for sale routinely because they're able to get top dollar for these cards, even though they aren't short printed. So if you're trying to complete this set, make sure you budget for this card because this is the one. You have to kind of like take a moment and step back and like, okay, if I'm completing the set, I do have to suck it up and be able to purchase this at the price. To get through this through the eBay authentication program, that's why there's that barcode on the back. I'm going to put that back actually in the box that came in. All right, we are close to the end there. All right, so there's an opening here again next to Manny Jimenez. And this is another one of those dual rookies. I featured this one on the show before. Got this at a pretty good price. That's why I went with the graded option on this one. So PSA 3. Picked this one up recently at the card show I was at last month. Here we are on the last 2 pages. All right, the last Hall of Famer, it belongs in that spot right there, and that's actually Brooks Robinson. Any Brooks Robinson collector is looking for this card to be able to complete the set, or complete their run of Brooks Robinson cards. They're really high condition, may cost a person a little bit more even than his rookie card. Probably not in a comparable grade, but it's a pricey card. Mine is also a PSA 4. The reason it was graded lower is because it's really miscut here at the bottom. And then on to the final page and the conclusion of the 1967 top set. Here, the final one missing here is Mike Shannon. It's a pricey card because, again, the Cardinals won the World Series, right next to another pricey card, the Red Sox team card, because they were the other opponent in the World Series. So you're starting to see a theme, right, of these cards. So that is it. Thank you for sitting into it. I know it was kind of long. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you didn't scroll through too quickly. I'm sure people might have done that. I will see everybody soon.